Revealed. The sinister delivery that haunted me for 3 years, a spine-chilling true encounter. It started as an ordinary afternoon in Ohio, sunlight seeping through the clouds, casting a warm glow on the blissful suburban street. The sound of children's laughter mixed with the rustling leaves until the thud against my porch shattered it all. I froze at the sight of an unmarked package nestled against my welcome mat, heart racing, fingers trembling. I picked it up, an odd weight in my hands, its brown cardboard scratched, almost sinister. Who sent this? I thought. Shrugging, I marched it back to the mail carrier, assuming it was a mistake. But unease twisted my stomach, coiling tighter, refusing to let go. The days dragged on, the sun retreating as fall approached, shadows stretching long and menacing. Then the scraping started. It was faint at first, like a whisper barely edged into my consciousness. Scratches against the window panes at night, faint but persistent, making my heart race. I would wake, drenched in sweat, Emma and Jake stirring next to me, their small bodies quaking in the dark. "Mommy, I heard something," they whispered, voices small but filled with terror. Echoing in the quiet halls, I tried to shake my fears, but each night felt like a living nightmare. Sleep eluded me, and while I fought my own demons, I remembered the package. My gut twisted again. What if it meant something? The next day, I spent hours digging into the history of our home, scouring online records, and stumbled onto something that made the blood drain from my face. Another single mother lived here before me with 2 kids like mine. They had vanished. Their last known interaction? A package, just like the one I had touched. Frantic calls to the police only resulted in laughter. Paranoia, they said, chuckling, as if I was being ridiculous. But something felt so wrong. My neighbors, their faces, something about them felt colder, smiles too tight, eyes glinting in odd ways. They gazed at me like I was the odd one, while secrets pulsed beneath their cheerful facades. Uneasy feelings wrapped around me like a thick fog. Then came the worst night. It started with the shadows again, creeping against the walls, wrapping me in dread. Suddenly, I realized Jake was gone. Panic washed over me like ice water, freezing my blood. I bolted through the darkness, every sound amplified. The thud of my heart, the soft rustle of leaves, and a laughter that echoed around me, cruel and taunting. It was then that I saw him, a neighbor, someone I thought I could trust. The light barely touched him, but I caught the edge of a terrifying grin, a predator's smile. "What's wrong, Sarah? Looking for something?" He jeered, and my skin crawled. I stumbled back, breath caught in my throat, a wave of despair crashing over me. I darted further down the street, heart racing, grasping onto the whimpering hope that I would find my son. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. I stumbled upon a flicker of red fabric caught in a bush, Jake's favorite blanket, fluttering like an ominous flag. I felt something dark deep inside, a sinister truth bubbling to the surface. With every house leaning and watching, I could feel them, eyes always watching. My own breath felt ragged. I was racing against shadows, every moment echoing with the weight of danger. And just as I rounded the last corner, there he stood, the grotesque silhouette staring back at me, recognition creeping in like a wicked vine. "You have something that belongs to me," it rasped, words thick with malice sending ice coursing through my veins. What fresh horror awaited me in this suburban nightmare, where once I thought I was safe? My fight to reclaim my family had just begun. My heart hammered in my chest as the figure loomed closer, a nightmarish presence pulling me into its web of terror. The words twisted in my ears, bruising my sanity. "What do you want?" I stammered, my voice barely a whisper. The air crackled with unspoken dread, thick and suffocating. His smile widened, exposing gleaming teeth. You know exactly what I want. That which is lost must be returned. The shadows around him danced, flaring like hungry spirits, teasing the edges of my periphery. Each flicker sent waves of panic surging through me. My instincts screamed to turn and run. But where would I go? Jake was somewhere in the darkness, and I couldn't leave him behind. With trembling hands, I clutched the blanket tighter, its familiar softness contrasting sharply with the terror engulfing me. The figure took a slow step forward. He was tall, almost impossibly so, looming over me like a ghost from my worst fears. My throat dried. You want to take him? You can't, I shouted, my voice wavering yet resolute, a desperate attempt to uncover any strength left within me. Take? He murmured, each syllable slithering through the cool night air. No, Sarah, I merely wish for what is mine. The sinister smile flickered again, a glint of understanding passing between us. He knew exactly how to twist the knife deeper. Your child belongs to the shadows now. A wave of vertigo swept through me. I stumbled backward, crashing against the wooden fence, my vision narrowing. I had seen children taken, faces that once lit up with laughter now lost to an existence unknown. Their stories folded into whispers. I lived by the fear that these neighbors held dark secrets. Had I become oblivious, comfortable in the madness around me, doing nothing while lurking terrors unfolded? The sound of a soft cry pierced through the tension, the distinct note of my son's voice calling out for me. Mommy! It was filled with fear, the anguish of a child that tore through the powerful fog of dread surrounding me. My instincts ignited. I turned in the direction of the voice, each step pulling me further from the malevolent figure but closer to the sound of my child. Jake! I screamed his name, echoing across the frightening expanse. Desperation clawed at my insides as I navigated the maze of shadows, frantically searching for the source. I could feel the cold heat of the figure behind me, his eyes boring into my back, a predator relishing the thrill of the hunt. Mommy! Help! Jake's pleas sliced through the air, pulling me forward like a lifeline. I rushed over crumpled leaves and twisted branches, the moonlight barely guiding my way. I felt a raw energy surge through me. I was a mother, and I refused to be a part of this malevolent game. Deeper into the night, I burst through a thicket and came to a clearing. The masked figure stood at its center. He was now surrounded by shadows, silent and still, like a nightmarish tapestry of darkness. There, just beyond him, stood Jake, wide-eyed and trembling. Stuck between my boy and that horrible silhouette, I felt a chasm open beneath me. Let him go! I cried out, my voice boiling over with raw desperation. The figure didn't move, just stared back at me with cold, calculating eyes as if weighing my worth, my resolve. With each moment suspended in agony, I remembered tales my mother told me as a child, stories of shadows that took things on certain nights and never returned them. Willing strength surged through me as I took a step forward, heart racing. I will find a way to save him, I muttered, an unwavering promise in the night. Suddenly, thunder rumbled in the distance, a whispered warning from the heavens themselves. The figure leaned closer, shadows undulating around him, and he hissed, "You should not have come here, Sarah. Darkness is where you belong." And just as he finished speaking, the sky erupted, lightning striking between us. The ground trembled, and for a fleeting moment, I glimpsed a glimmer, a way out, a chance. But as the night closed in, I wondered, would it be enough to save my son from this living nightmare? Just what had I unleashed in my desperate fight for my family? The ground groaned underfoot as the shadows writhed, and I could feel the stakes rising. How much further would I need to go to reclaim everything I held dear? A crack of thunder echoed, drowning out my thoughts and shaking the branches above. The storm was intensifying. Just as my pulse quickened, my gaze flickered back to the figure. His presence was still there, smirking, as the shadows writhed around him like serpents hungry for prey. I gulped, each breath feeling heavier than the last. I needed to summon whatever courage I had left. "Jake!" I screamed again, my voice finding new strength amid the chaos. I'm coming. Hold on. But the viscous darkness around the figure parted slightly. For the briefest moment, I saw him, my boy wide-eyed trembling. His small form so frail beneath the weight of such an evil. Instinctively, I lunged forward, but the shadows snapped back, barring my path. It was like trying to run into a wall. Panic surged, freezing my limbs. The figure's laughter echoed, low and guttural. You think you can save him? You're too late, Sarah. His words dripped with venom, striking at my resolve. Each letter whispered like a poisonous wind, gnawing at my sanity. No, I screamed, desperation clawing at my throat. I looked around, searching for an escape, searching for a sign. The forest loomed around me like a sentient beast, twistingly beautiful and grotesque. The wind howled through the trees, carrying remnants of my screams and Jake's cries along with it. Help me, Jake shouted again, tears carving paths down his dirt-streaked cheeks. I could see it in his eyes. He was afraid like I'd never seen before. The shadows surged forward suddenly, coiling like wraiths to wrap around my body. I felt its coldness seep into my skin, a paralyzing dread that threatened to pull me under. I gasped, struggling against the shackles of the dark. Stop! Let me go! The fire within me roared, pushing the shadows back momentarily. I remembered the stories, the strength that came from love. I wasn't just facing the darkness. I was fighting for my son. With a furious shout, I ripped free, bolting toward Jake. But as I closed the distance, the figure stepped aside with a flourish. You can't have him, Sarah, he taunted, the shadows now swirling into a vortex at his feet. But you can join him. You can belong to the shadows too. I surged forward, mind racing. What could break this curse? It was as if the very fabric of the universe was tangled in his grasp. My fingers brushed against the cool earth, and something caught my eye a glimmer. It was the silver locket I had given Jake, the one I thought I had lost. Jake! I shouted, grabbing the locket and holding it high. This is ours. It's not lost. You're not lost. The moment I spoke those words, a ripple shot through the shadows. The figure's expression shifted, a frown deepening as he watched. The vortex began to slow, faltering under the weight of my belief. I won't let you take him. I shouted again, voice echoing, merging with the chorus of thunder. I tossed the locket with all my strength past the figure, past the swirling darkness, aiming directly for my son. Time seemed to slow as the locket arced through the air, shining like a beacon. My heart raced, but in Jake's eyes, I saw hope flicker back to life. The moment the locket landed at his feet, a bright beam of light shot out, illuminating our surroundings like a flash bomb. Shadows screamed, recoiling as if they were living beings caught in a firestorm. I could hardly breathe as I witnessed the chaos unfold. But just as quickly as the light erupted, I heard the figure howl, a sound that rattled my bones. His eyes glinted with rage. This battle not over. You think this is just a game? He bellowed. This is only the beginning. I felt the ground tremble beneath me, cracks forming as the darkness roared back. I reached for Jake, but this storm felt different now, charged with fury and vengeance. Then everything snapped. The forest groaned, echoes of the past roaring to life, swirling chaos returning to me, and I was left standing on the edge of despair, with only one burning question. What happens when the shadows gather again? The ground shook violently, and the air crackled like it was alive. I willed myself to move, but each step toward Jake felt like climbing through molasses. The dark figure smirked, his presence swirling with a force I couldn't grasp. What kind of power had I awakened with the locket? Jake, grab it. Grab the locket, I shouted, panic surging again. I could see him stretching out his hand, trembling, inching towards the locket now glowing fiercely against the cold, damp earth. The shadows screamed like tormented souls, a cacophony of despair. They twisted and roamed, enveloping trees in darkness, morphing the forest into a maze of dread. Even the wind turned against me, wailing as if it could sense the encroaching horror. I closed my eyes momentarily, praying for strength, praying that what I had given Jake would be enough. Then I felt it, a cold hand grasping my ankle, wrenching me down. My body buckled, and I hit the ground hard, the breath knocked out of me. I gasped, clawing at the soil, trying to dislodge myself. The weight of despair pressed down as I dragged myself closer to my son, heart pounding violently in my chest. "Stay away from her," Jake cried, getting to his feet. The locket was glowing like a hot ember, but it flickered slightly. Time was running out. "Mom!" His voice cracked, filled with a piercing fear that cut through the chaos. With renewed determination, I forced myself up and grabbed a branch, brandishing it like a sword. "You will not take him. Get away." I swung at the shadows coiling around me, feeling a flicker of hope as they recoiled, losing their grasp. But the figure laughed, an unsettling sound that reverberated with malice. "You think you can fight me with a stick? You're a fool." He stepped forward, the shadows thickening around him as he moved, feeding off his fury. Jake darted towards the locket, his small figure stark against the billowing gloom. "Mom, Jake, no!" I screamed, lunging forward again, desperation surging. But the ground cracked beneath him, a chasm King Midas would envy, as shadowy hands reached for my son. "Help!" he cried again, his voice haunting, echoing in the swirling void. It was losing ground, but so was I. Just then, the storm released a blinding flash. For a split second, I could see the figure stagger, caught off balance. The shadows writhed back momentarily, letting out a shriek that reverberated like a thunderclap. In that instant, I hesitated. Should I try to control the light to protect him further or reach for my son? The choice hung heavy, pulling me in two directions. "Mom!" he shouted, and it broke through my hesitation. In the face of evil, there was only one truth. I would always choose him. I sprinted for the locket while high-pitched whispers slithered around my mind, tempting and taunting. "You'll die for him, this is only the start." They crawled beneath my skin, pooling despair deep within me, speaking my worst fears into existence. "Get back!" I yelled defiantly. I swung the branch again, striking the ground, feeling its vibrations sink deep into my bones. The shadows recoiled slightly. That was my opening. Before I reached the locket, another surge of darkness struck, a wave crashing over me like icy water. I felt it pull at my essence, every ounce of hope bleeding away into its void. But then I heard it, Jake's voice, crystal clear. "Mom, I need you. Trust me." I hesitated, but in his words, I felt the warmth of our bond, the glow of love igniting against the encroaching dark. Maybe he had power too. In a desperate whirl, I turned toward him, eyes locked onto the locket. It began to pulse rhythmically, echoing with a heartbeat. The shadows surged back, more viciously than before, and I was left standing at the cliff of despair and hope. Now I had to decide. What would I sacrifice to save my son? The darkness laughed once again, filling my ears with madness. Prowled closer, issuing a challenge. "What will you lose to save him?" "Time is running out." A tremor raced through the ground beneath me, and as I looked back at my son, I felt the shadows close in. The air hung, thick with dread, suffocating, and I realized this was only the beginning. What was it that Jake would unlock in this terrifying standoff? I lunged forward, desperate hands reaching for the locket. It pulsed against the earth, its rhythm echoing the frantic beats of my heart. Every inch felt like a battleground, the shadows slithering with insidious glee, whispering promises of despair. They wanted us to falter, to lose everything. Several feet away, Jake kept backing up, the darkness clawing at his heels. "Mom!" His voice trembled, panic shimmering like glass. "Hold on, baby!" I shouted, but my voice felt small against the chaos, swallowed by the monstrous laughter surrounding us. The figure stood looming over everything, unnaturally tall, eyes glinting like shards of glass. The shadows seemed to mold around his form, each tendril writhing and searching for a weakness. The locket almost glowed now, illuminating the chaos, a beacon against the overwhelming black. It was his lifeline. I had to reach it. "Jake, run!" I screamed, forcing my legs to propel me forward. But the shadows wrapped around my limbs, pulling me back, clawing at my spirit, their icy fingers burrowing into my skin. I gasped, heart racing, fighting through the tide of fear. "Mom!" His voice cracked like dry wood, and each cry sharpened my desperation. I gripped the branch tighter, its rough bark digging into my palm. I swung again wildly, the air slicing through with a whoosh. Shadows recoiled like serpents, hissing and writhing away from the sting of light, but they were quick to retaliate. Such pathetic resistance. The figure sneered, stepping closer, shadows stretching under him like dark wings. "You'll pay dearly for this folly." A sudden gust of wind howled, whipping around us in a chaotic dance. The trees groaned, and the darkness seemed to pulse, hungry for fear. I could feel it scraping at the edges of my mind, gnawing away at my resolve. Images flared in my head, whispers of regret, faces of loved ones lost. Could I endanger them again? "Get away from him," I bellowed, summoning every ounce of courage. Jake was almost to the locket now, his small hands trembling, fingers grasping towards hope. But still, the ground quaked and split, dark hands clawing upwards from the abyss beneath him. "Jake!" I lunged, and everything fell silent for a breath. The shadows held with a bone-crushing pressure, their dark tendrils entwining around my chest, pulling tighter. I could hardly breathe. Suddenly, I felt it a surge deep within, a flicker of strength ignited by the love I felt for Jake. The locket pulsed brighter, as if responding to my resolve. "Trust me, Mom." His urging pierced through the darkness, igniting something in me. I couldn't afford to hesitate any longer. With a burst of energy, I swung the branch again, aiming straight at the apparition's heart. It struck true, colliding with a sound like 1,000 shattering mirrors. The figure hissed, retreating, shadows recoiling violently. "Foolish woman, you don't know what you've done." But there wasn't time for doubt. I surged forward, bearing down on the elusive locket. The shadows screeched, angry and frantic. They twisted, forming walls around Jake. But even as they closed in, I felt our bond throbbing bright and strong. Then it happened. In the chaos, something within the locket resonated, blooming into a fierce light, casting a warm glow through the frigid dark. It emanated a hum that seemed to harmonize with Jake's heartbeat. "Jake, now!" I cried, urging him to act. He stumbled, reaching desperately for the locket just as the darkness screamed in rage, fighting against the light as shadows clawed at his feet. Would he be fast enough? The very fabric of the night seemed to tear, splintering along the edges of our fraying reality. The air crackled and shimmered, thick with tension, as I watched my son pull away from the gaping maw of despair. The locket refused to fade, defiance bathing us both. "Jake!" I urged once more, my heart hammering in my chest. "Grab it." But then, just as he reached out, shadows flared anew, and the figure laughed chillingly once more. "You think this is over? You've awakened something far worse," and suddenly, the world fell silent. My heart stopped amid the stillness, dread pooling in my gut. What had we truly awakened? The locket shimmered one last time. Had we just unlocked a horror beyond our understanding? The silence was deafening, a stifling blanket pressing down on us. I could hear nothing but the ragged breaths of desperation escaping my lips. The shadows hovered, patient and hungry, as if they were savoring the moment, waiting for the right time to strike. Jake's hand shook as he reached for the locket. "Mom," he breathed, his voice barely more than a whisper. The shadows writhed like living things, eager tendrils reaching out, creeping closer with each second that passed. They were no longer just figments of darkness, they were alive. "Grab it, Jake," I urged, instinct pushing me forward, the branch still clutched tightly in my fist. But I felt the weight of the darkness bearing down on me again, a cold sweat running down my spine. The figure, its sickening grin broadening, seemed to absorb the surrounding shadows, growing larger, more formidable. "You think a mere trinket can save you?" it mocked. You've traced a path to despair that cannot be undone. I could see Jake's determination wavering, fear clawing at his young features. It's just so dark. Mom, his voice trembled, a fragile string about to snap. No, I cried, my heart burning with need to protect him. I swung the branch again, but it felt like fighting the tide. Each sweep barely held the darkness at bay. Focus, Jake. Focus on the light. And then it happened. A crack, sharp and sudden, rang through the air as the locket exploded with brilliant light, illuminating our surroundings in a blinding flash. For a split second, everything froze. The figure recoiled, shadowy forms erupting like a swarm of disturbed insects, screeching in rage. What did you do? It sounded frantic, now vulnerable. You cannot control the darkness. In that moment of chaos, I felt the shadows retreat, their tendrils loosening from around me. I couldn't waste this chance. Jake, I yelled, grab it now. His fingers found the locket, and I watched as a pulse of energy radiated from it, an ethereal glow wrapping around Jake like a shield. He shuddered but held on, eyes wide with disbelief and fear. The shadows around us hissed and twisted, desperately trying to latch onto him, to drag him back into the void. Feel it, Jake. Strong, I urged, pushing a wave of hope into my voice, trying to drown out the ramblings of despair clawing at my mind. But then the figure lunged forward. With a scream that sounded like an amalgam of the damned, it invaded the light, attempting to envelop Jake. It swiped its arm, even though for a moment, the light was impenetrable. Mom! Help! Jake shouted, panic lighting his face. He was being pulled, his grip faltering. Hold on! I roared in fury. In that moment, I surged forward, branch raised high, plunging it toward the ghastly figure. The impact felt like striking solid stone, an explosion of darkness and light shattering the night. But something felt wrong. Instead of quaking like before, now the shadows pulsed and throbbed as if alive. The figure laughed darkly, the sound reverberating in the depths of my chest. You think you can banish me? You have merely disturbed a slumber, and the true nightmare is about to awaken. A wave of cold fear washed over me. My heart pounded, pounding louder than the echoes of his laughter. Mom! It's too much! Jake cried, the locket dimming, the light flickering erratically like a dying flame. My breath quickened, dread looping tighter around my chest. Stay with me, Jake. We can't let them win. Just as I braced myself for another strike, the ground shook beneath us, a deep, rumbling quake that sent shockwaves through my bones. A fissure split the earth open, a chasm lined with darkness yawning wide, threatening to swallow us whole. And then came the whispers, soft, seductive, and sinister, creeping into my mind, sowing self-doubt and fear, promising the end of our suffering at a terrible price. What price would we have to pay? The darkness surged toward us, and in that moment of horror, I realized the terrifying truth: they were just getting started. Could we escape what we had unleashed, or would we fall forever into the void, our very souls consumed? Jake! I shouted as the shadows rallied, preparing to strike. Would light and love be enough to stop the tide of an ancient evil? And the ground opened wider, the pull growing stronger. The chasm roared, a violent maw that seemed to pull reality itself into the abyss. I felt it tugging at me, urging me to compromise, to let go of the fight. Mom! I can't, Jake gasped, his knuckles white as he clutched the locket. The flickering light struggled to hold back the flood of shadows that surged like hungry wolves. Their voices crawled under my skin, urging me to give up, to surrender. And that moment of clarity amidst chaos, I gritted my teeth, feeling every ounce of dread coiling in my gut. We won. Let them win. Do you hear me, Jake? I shouted, my voice trembling but laced with fierce determination. The laughter grew louder, drowning out my words. You think you can change destiny? The figure twisted in the light, contorting grotesquely, its mouth like a gaping void filled with jagged teeth. You are merely a vessel of despair. Everyone you love will turn to shadow. The words struck me like a knife, cutting deep into my resolve. Memories of loved ones, of friends lost, of promises broken, of dreams now weighed down by this nightmare flooded my mind. I shook my head, trying to dispel the images that threatened to drown me. I could not let fear claim us here. "Jake!" I yelled, my voice cracking. "We need to push it back. Focus on the love. Focus on us." As if sensing our defiance, the shadows screamed in fury, dark tendrils reaching for our throats. I swung the branch wildly, trying to keep them at bay. "Mom! The locket!" Jake's voice surged through my panic. I saw it, then the locket pulsing with an intensity that matched my racing heart. It glowed, a beacon against the encroaching darkness. "Right? Just hold on tight," I urged. "We can do this." I could feel the air thickening around us, vibrating with unseen energy. The creature hissed, desperate now, grasping for any opportunity to pull us under. Just as the darkness touched my skin, a surprising warmth enveloped me. The locket blazed like a sun, pouring forth waves of pure light that pushed back the shadows. "Keep holding it," I shouted, feeling the tide shift. Shadows contorted as they shrieked, the light burning them away. But it didn't stop there. With each pulse of light, the fissure beneath us shrank, struggling to contain its darkness. "No, you cannot do this," the figure screeched, its form flickering as the light began to unravel it. In that frantic moment I saw my chance. I dashed forward, eyes set on the crack in the ground, and raised the branch like a spear. "For the light!" I screamed, plunging the branch into the earth as the shadows recoiled in alarm. There was a deafening silence, like the world holding its breath. The light spread beneath our feet, spider-webbing through the chasm. But just before I could exhale in relief, the shadows screamed, a sound that echoed with fury and anguish. They coiled around the fissure, grabbing at the edges, trying to hold on, fighting the light with everything they had. "Jake, push the locket toward the crack," I shouted. He nodded, his face strained but determined. As he held the locket toward the fissure, the light exploded, a wave of energy that churned the air and shook the ground. The ground quaked violently, shattering with blinding light. But in that blinding moment, I felt a sudden weight lift off my chest. The shadows screamed, fading into an ethereal mist and dissipating into nothingness. "Did we do it?" Jake gasped, breathless. I hoped so, but deep inside, I felt the chilling grip of uncertainty. "I don't know, but we have to move." Just then, a low whisper floated through the air, soft yet menacing. A new figure emerged from the shadows, darker and yet strangely familiar. "You may have won today, but I will always be here." Watching, my blood ran cold as I met Jake's terrified eyes. "What does that mean?" he asked, trembling. And suddenly, the ground beneath us shifted again, signaling that the true battle had only just begun. The ground trembled violently, throwing us off balance. As I stumbled, I instinctively reached for Jake, grasping his hand tight. His eyes were wide, reflecting the palpable fear that enveloped us. "Mom, what is happening?" he shouted, his voice rising above the chaos. "Hold on. We can't let it take us," I yelled, forcing my feet down, feeling the earth pulse beneath us like a living thing. The shadows twisted above us, a dark storm brewing, threatening to swallow our light once more. The figure loomed larger now, its outline crackling with energy. "Your light cannot extinguish the darkness forever," it echoed, a guttural sound that reverberated through the very air we breathed. "I am the keeper of all you fear, and you have only just begun to see." My heart raced. This was no mere creature. It was the embodiment of everything I tried to escape, every regret, every haunting memory. "Jake, we have to focus. Get the locket ready again." Jake nodded, fear mingling with fierce determination. He gripped the locket tighter, pulsed, ready to respond to the battle ahead. As we faced the entity, I sensed that its energy was growing stronger. This thing thrived on our despair, on our fear. With a gasp, I remembered the warmth we felt before. "The love, Jake. It's our strength. Think of Grandma, think of all the good things." Clenching his jaw, Jake shut his eyes tightly. I felt the light thrum again, harmonizing with Jake's memories. He opened his eyes, a spark igniting within them. "I'm ready, Mom." As if it heard us, the figure recoiled, snarling. "Foolish mortals. You cannot face me, look around you." The shadows expanded, revealing glimpses of my past. Snapshots of fear and regret floated around us, twisting and blending into a macabre tapestry. Faces flashed before me, friends I lost, moments I wished to forget, all eager to drown me in an ocean of despair. "No, I won't let you," I shouted into the darkness, forcing every ounce of love and resolve into my voice. "Leave us be." With my words, the light from the locket flared, illuminating the darkness that surrounded us. Hues of gold erupted through the shadows, pushing them back like lichened waves crashing against a shore. The dark figure writhed, momentarily losing its hold. "He can't control us," I heard Jake shout, his voice growing strong. Together, we thrust the locket toward the figure, the light expanding, twisting into a beam so bright I could barely bear to look. The shadows shrieked, contorting in agony. But then, in the glimmer of brilliance, the figure coiled back, its mouth stretching into a wicked grin. "You think you can defeat your fears?" It spat. "They are woven into your very soul. And every time you push me away, I grow stronger." Fear tore through me, mingling with anger and resolve. I recognized the truth: it thrived on our pain, our anxiety. "We are more than our fears," I cried, desperately strengthening my grip on Jake. The shadows clawed at the light, trying to snuff it out. But the warmth growing from the locket stabilized my heart, its glow now fed by our unity, our bond. "Keep thinking of each other," I urged, my voice breaking the thick air. Just as the darkness lunged forward, something shifted. It was no longer solid. The shadows began to splinter, scattering like ashes in the wind, but not without retaliation. With a howl, the figure reassembled, larger and more sinister, brandishing its jagged teeth in a chilling visage. "You may have won a battle," it hissed, "but the war will consume you." The darkness surged again, a tide of black rushing toward us, testing our light, and suddenly, a terrifying realization gripped me. What if this wasn't just a battle for survival? What if it was a gateway to something much, much worse? The ground beneath us swelled, shifting, hinting at deeper, darker horrors lurking beneath the surface. The thought sent a cold shiver down my spine. "Jake, we need to run," I screamed as the ground roared in response. But as we turned to flee, I caught a glimpse of what awaited us. A pair of red eyes flickered from the depths of the chasm. They glowed, with a sinister intent, promising that our escape wouldn't be so simple. We sprinted, the ground tremoring violently beneath our feet. Each step felt as if we were running away from an avalanche, an unstoppable force ready to consume us whole. I could hear Jake's breath beside me, quick and shallow, matching the rapid pounding of my heart. The shadows writhed and lunged, snapping at our heels like hungry wolves. "Mom, over there," Jake shouted, his voice desperate. He pointed toward a narrow crevice in the rock, barely visible against the encroaching darkness. "Go, now," I urged, pushing him ahead. I could feel the chill of the figure's presence behind us, like icy fingertips grazing my back. The heat from the locket surged, but it was losing ground against the overwhelming darkness. We dove into the crevice, the jagged edges biting into my skin as I pushed through, pulling Jake along with me. It was cramped too tight for comfort, and every heartbeat echoed, amplifying my panic. The darkness closed in, pressing against us, wrapping around like a suffocating shroud. "Mom, it's so dark," Jake whimpered, his voice laced with terror. "Just breathe, sweetheart. Keep holding onto the locket," I whispered, though I was losing my grip on hope. The shadows outside began clawing at the entrance. I could hear the figure's laughter, a sickening sound that filled the air like poison. "You cannot hide from your fears. They will find you always." I gritted my teeth, forcing myself to push thoughts of despair away. I clenched the locket, feeling its pulse against my palm, warm and alive. "We can't let it win, Jake. Think of Grandma. Think of the light." In that moment, a faint glow seeped through the rocks, illuminating the crevice just enough to cast eerie silhouettes. I turned to Jake, hoping he could feel it too. We have to stick together. Stay strong. Mom, what if it gets in? He whispered, his voice trembling. Let it try. We have each other. I replied, my heart racing against the mounting dread. The shadows outside howled, ferocious and relentless, as if sensing our fear. Suddenly, the air thickened, compressing around us. The glow flickered, then dimmed, swallowed by an onslaught of darkness. My breath caught in my chest as the first tendrils of it slithered through the crevice, creeping toward us like a living nightmare. A jolt of panic surged through me. Jake, we must find a way out, I urged, struggling to keep my voice steady. My mind raced, searching for any way to escape. The walls felt like they were closing in, the oppressive weight of the shadows suffocating my thoughts. Then I saw it a shimmer, a faint outline of what looked like an exit higher up in the crevice. Look, there. I pointed, a flicker of hope igniting. Can we reach it? Jake asked, his blue eyes wide with fear and determination. We have to try. Climb on my back, I instructed. He nodded, and with a quick surge of adrenaline, I braced myself, pushing upward. The darkness chuckled, mocking our struggle, but I refused to listen. Each movement shook the ground, reverberating the menace outside. As I climbed, I could feel the darkness taunting us, creeping closer. Jake clung to my shoulders, trembling. Faster, Mom, he urged, panic rising in his voice. With one final push, I reached for the ledge, my fingers slipping against cold stone. Hold on tight, I yelled, gripping the edge with all my strength. Just as my foot found purchase, a shadow lunged forward, brushing against my ankle like icy tendrils of despair. I heaved with all my might, dragging ourselves up and bursting through into the light. The moment felt surreal, a blinding contrast to the oppressive darkness we had just escaped. But as we stumbled out, our relief quickly turned to terror. The ground was gone. We stood at the precipice of a chasm, and the abyss yawned below, echoing with sinister whispers. The creature stood before us, its form twisted and hideous, its red eyes blazing with fury. You thought you could escape? This is just the beginning, it growled, the shadows swirling like angry waves at its feet. Jake, we have to jump, I screamed, adrenaline surging through my veins. We had no choice. Heart racing, we leaped into the unknown, just as the darkness lunged. And in that moment, I wondered, was this truly a chance for survival, or a descent into far worse terrors? As we fell, the truth loomed larger than the shadows surrounding us. The world blurred around them, a whirlwind of darkness and light as they plummeted, bodies entwined in a fierce grip. Moments felt like eternity in that endless descent, but then everything stopped. They landed not in an abyss, but on a soft patch of grass, shimmering in the light of dawn. Sunshine poured over them, dispelling the terrifying shadows that had choked the very air from their lungs. Jake gasped, his face flushed with confusion and relief. Mom, we made it, but where are we? The ground felt solid, warm, and vibrant, unlike the nightmarish landscape they had just escaped. Sarah looked around, blinking against the brilliant light. I don't know, but their moment of peace shattered. The inky figure emerged from the shadows, walking toward them with a predatory grace, brushing aside the light as if it were simply an illusion. You think you can hide? It hissed, its voice echoing like a hurricane. You're not free. You can never escape what you are. Sarah felt the tremors of fear spread through her. Jake, stay close, she called, gripping his hand tighter. The figure laughed, a sound that turned her stomach. You cannot face the darkness alone, child. I will always be here lurking and waiting. No, you leave him alone, she shouted, channeling every ounce of anger into her voice. The entity recoiled briefly, startled. It hadn't expected her raw determination. With a deep breath, Sarah clutched the locket, its presence warming her palm. The light is stronger than you, she declared, drawing on the supportive memories Jake stirred in her heart. In that moment, Jake stepped forward, bravely holding the locket up high. "Mom, let us do it together," he shouted, the love he felt resonating through the fragile air, creating an invisible barrier between them and the creature. The locket began to glow, brighter than the sun, radiating warmth that chased away shadows. An ethereal sound rippled through the space, a melody of hope intertwining with their courage. The shadows hissed, recoiling, fury igniting in the creature's eyes. "You think this light can hold me?" it spat, dark tendrils reaching for them, desperate for connection. "Yes, can," Jake yelled, confidence rising as he turned towards Sarah. "Remember, Mom, love always wins." His words sparked something deep within Sarah. Together, they shouted in unison, their voices merging into one harmonious cry. The locket flared brilliantly, illuminating their surroundings, pushing back against the creeping darkness as if the very fabric of their bond was frosting the shadows in a layer of pure light. With that burst of determination, swirling waves of warmth began engulfing them, pushing the creature back inch by inch. Each pulse shattered fragments of the nightmarish world they had been trapped in. They could feel the darkness falter, the glimmer of light creating fissures that swallowed the shadows whole. "No, you cannot defeat me," the figure shrieked, hardly able to contain its panic as bright light devastated its form. With one last, desperate surge, they concentrated on every loving memory as a lance of light erupted from the locket, piercing through the shadowy form. The darkness twisted violently, its shrieks morphing into agonized wails as it dissipated. And then, silence. The remnants of shadow melted away, leaving only a tranquil paradise in its wake. The earthy scent of freshly bloomed flowers filled the air, and golden rays of sunlight cascaded around them, a sanctuary untouched by darkness. Like a dream, they stood hand in hand amidst the beauty, their breaths calming as they gazed at the horizon. "Did we really do it?" Jake whispered, his voice full of wonder. Sarah knelt beside him, pulling him into a hug, relief washing over her like the sweetest rain. "I think we did," she breathed. "Together we faced our fears. Together we defeated them." Jake smiled, his joy radiant, filling the air around them. The love they shared had guided them through the horror, solidifying their bond stronger than any malevolent shadow could sever. As they walked forward, mom and son, hand in hand embracing the new day, Sarah glanced back one last time at the dissipating shadows, a reminder etched deep in her heart. Their journey was far from ordinary, but they were no longer haunted. Instead, they were free, ready to live a life painted in vibrant hues of love and laughter. But even as the shadows faded, a quiet whisper seeped through her thoughts, echoing a warning. "I'll always be here waiting." Life had its battles, and they would be prepared for any darkness that dared to rise again. Remember, this is just the beginning of their story. If you enjoyed their journey, if it pulled at your heartstrings or made you feel alive, this is the moment to show your support. You need to subscribe now to catch all the future tales that await. Smash that like button now, let us feed the algorithm and keep the stories coming. And flood the comments section below with your thoughts and theories about their journey. We want to hear how it made you feel. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to be part of this conclusion. Join us, and let us navigate the tales that ignite the heart.